This case is about a wife and a mother who found herself in perhaps a failing marriage, a business in trouble.
What's your first name?
And took, some could argue, an easy way out.
I think she really wanted to improve her life and be free and be rich and have this facade of being the successful person that she wanted to be.
My name is Eric.
My name is Laura, and we served as jurors in the Kouri Richins trial.
Please have a seat.
Kouri Richins didn't seem to me like someone with a very strong moral compass.
Eric Richins was found dead in his home on March 4th, 2022. Eric was married to Kouri Richins, and they had 3 children.
911, what's the address of the emergency? My husband's not breathing. He's cold. I just came in the bed, in our bed, and I turned over, and he's just cold. He's just cold.
So what happened today?
I don't know. He was just fine. We were fine. I don't know. It didn't make sense.
The family had been alerted by Eric that if something happened to him, to look at Kouri. It was almost like they knew something like this could happen someday.
This was in the months leading up to his death.
Right.
He felt that his life could be at risk.
Right. They suspected Kouri would take part in his death before it happened.
The state alleged that Kouri Richins killed her husband, Eric, by giving him a lethal dose of fentanyl.
A Summit County woman who wrote a children's book about coping with grief following her husband's death, now accused of being the one that actually killed him.
The book was to honor him, to express to these boys to remember their father.
She's accused essentially murdering the person who is the topic of the book. Words of wisdom: do not write books while you're being investigated.
As we were preparing for trial,
Kouri was 100% pure goodness and kindness. She's a good human being.
She might have had these good sides to her where she was giving, but she was willing to give that part up.
did Kouri Richins ever ask you to purchase for her illicit drugs?
Yes.
Based upon the testimony and the evidence we saw against Kouri, I came to see her as pretty cold and pretty calculating.
You have to understand that the jurors did not know her. They didn't know her.
There was no smoking gun in this case. There was never one thing in this case that was absolutely Kouri did it and there's no question.
She basically sacrificed her husband to get what she wanted.
My sweet baby boys. And as much as you've been influenced into thinking that Dad was murdered, that I took your dad from you, that is completely wrong. An absolute lie. Kouri did not just kill Eric. She attempted to kill the spirit of everyone who loved him. She lied to his children, she lied to the world, and has shown no remorse while dancing on his grave for profit.
The evidence will prove that Kouri Richins murdered Eric for his money and to get a fresh start at life.
In February of 2026, in a packed courtroom in Summit County, Utah, Chief Prosecutor Brad Bloodworth laid out the state's case against Kouri Richins for the murder of Eric Richins, her husband and father of their 3 sons. It had been nearly 4 years since Eric died on March 4th, 2022, of a lethal dose of fentanyl, served to him by Kouri in a cocktail, say prosecutors. She had spent almost 3 years in jail awaiting trial.
More than anything, she wanted his money to perpetuate her facade of privilege, affluence, and success.
Eric Richins owned a lucrative contracting business, and Kouri worked as a real estate agent, buying and flipping houses. She was facing not just murder charges, but also insurance fraud and forgery counts.
She was absolutely convinced that she would be found not guilty.
Greg Hall is a friend and former colleague of Kouri's.
What made her so convinced of that outcome?
Because she knows that she didn't do it.
Initially, authorities thought Eric may have died from an accidental drug overdose. But as investigators dug deeper, they concluded that Kouri poisoned Eric for financial gain.
Watch out for Kouri. Watch out if something happens to me.
According to Greg Skordas, a spokesperson for Eric's family, Eric had raised concerns about Kouri to his family.
The night Eric died, were they immediately suspecting that Kouri took part in his death?
They suspected Kouri would take part in his death before it happened. And so when it did happen, it was everyone's worst nightmare come true.
My husband's not breathing. He's cold.
As the state built its case against Kouri Richins, her 911 call saying she found Eric unresponsive in bed was an integral piece of evidence.
If you need to put me on speaker, put me on speaker. I'm gonna guide you through CPR, okay?
The prosecution used the recording throughout the trial to call into question whether Kouri was even trying to resuscitate Eric.
Start counting out loud so I can count with you, okay?
The operator repeatedly asks the phone to be put on speaker so Kouri can listen while performing CPR.
1, 2, 3, 4. Am I on speaker? Yes.
But a prosecution digital forensic analyst testified that phone receiver sensor activity showed Kouri was actually holding the phone to her ear during the call.
There's a proximity sensor inside the device that activates the receiver.
The digital download expert could actually see that Kouri did not put the phone on speakerphone. She was still holding it up to her ear. That means she wasn't doing compressions, or if she was doing it with one hand.
The 911 call was impactful for jurors Laura and Eric, who requested we not use their last names.
Listening to the call, it didn't seem like there was much effort in the compressions themselves.
The impression these jurors had of her resuscitation attempts didn't match Kouri's description of events, which she texted to her friend Chelsea Barney. Prosecutor Bloodworth read the messages to the jury.
His lifeless body on my bedroom floor. I pumped so damn hard, so hard, screaming at him to come back to life, that I needed him.
Some of her text messages to a friend, she said she was screaming and beating on his chest, and the evidence did not show that.
Some of Kouri's other actions the day Eric died puzzled the jurors we interviewed, like her behavior on this deputy's body cam footage shown in court.
It was strange. Right after Eric died, Kouri was holding her face with her hands.
It certainly looks like she was trying to hide her face and her emotion.
Where are your children now?
One's asleep in that room, 2 are awake with their ear to the door.
And when the jurors compared Kouri's behavior in the footage to Eric's sister's, they found the contrast startling.
Eric's sister, Kouri Richins, came in. She was hysterical.
Take a deep breath. Take a deep breath.
Near hyperventilating. And her first thought was, where are the kids? Are the kids okay? And through that whole video, Kouri said, my kids are in that room and one of them's listening, but never did she move to go comfort those kids.
Eric's sister, Katie, testified about arriving at the house.
On the morning that Eric died, did Kouri Richins say anything about the house that they were living in?
Yes, she told me she was going to sell it.
According to Katie, just hours after Eric's death, Kouri was talking real estate, how she planned to sell their home and how she needed to close on a house she had just purchased, known as the Midway Mansion.
I had just lost one of the most important people in my whole entire life. And she was planning on selling the house that he had just been wheeled out of, closing on a multi-million-dollar mansion. I could not wrap my head around it.
Prosecutors also presented evidence of something accessed on Kouri's cell phone that morning. These gifts seemingly celebrating coming into money.
I thought the gifts were really odd. If she was the one that pulled them up, which it certainly seems like that is the case, that's just more evidence of her state of mind at the time.
It was not clear to the jurors whether the gifts were celebrating Eric's death or celebrating the Midway Mansion purchase. Either way, they found the timing curious.
Still inappropriate the day after her husband passed away that she's accessing these. So it was strange.
Strange behavior aside, the state's case hinged on proving Kouri intentionally poisoned Eric, that he did not die of an accidental overdose. The prosecution contends it was Kouri who administered the fentanyl, either in a cocktail called a Moscow Mule or in a lemon drop shot that she prepared for Eric. Investigators found this note in a kitchen cabinet, which the prosecution says chronicles how Kouri killed Eric.
Notice that here she writes drink in bed.
And the prosecutor told the jury about something else authorities found unusual. In this incident report, describing what happened that night, Kouri immediately writes about having a drink around 9:15 p.m. to celebrate work.
Her story that night that she wrote started with Eric drinking a drink that she made. Why would her story start then? Why wouldn't it start when she walked in the door and found that he wasn't moving? That was just one of these really subtle things that I thought was really important.
Also important for jurors was knowing how Kouri obtained the fentanyl. For that, prosecutors turned to a witness who became a controversial figure in the case, Kouri's housekeeper.
Did you ask Kouri Richins about Eric's death?
Yes, I did.
What did you ask her?
I said, please tell me these pills were not for him.
What man is your name?
Carmen Lauber.
Carmen Lauber was Kouri and Eric's housekeeper, and she cleaned homes for Kouri's real estate flipping business. Prosecutors say Carmen also did something else. She supplied Kouri with the drugs used to kill Eric.
Did Kouri Richins ever ask you to purchase for her illicit drugs?
Yes.
How many times?
4.
In a lot of ways, she is the key witness.
Sky Lazaro had been Kouri Richins' attorney before resigning from the case due to a conflict of interest.
Carmen really was the only person who could tie Kouri to obtaining fentanyl.
Carmen testified that in the months preceding Eric's death, Kouri asked her to get pain medication for a client, which Carmen did. Then, about 2 weeks before Eric died, Kouri made another request for something stronger. Carmen says she reached out to a drug dealer friend and told Kouri she could get her fentanyl.
I had texted Kouri back and told her that I had a friend that could get them, but they were fentanyl pills.
How did Kouri Richins respond?
She said, okay, go ahead and get them.
The state contends Kouri mixed that fentanyl into the Moscow Mule or lemon drop shot she served Eric. Carmen, though, has an arrest record from drug charges and is not an ideal witness.
She had a history of drug abuse. And although I think she's overcome that, those are who you deal with in criminal cases. They're not always the shiniest people in the world.
The jurors we spoke with were able to look past Carmen's history and found her credible.
I put a lot of weight on Carmen Lauber's testimony. I found it very impactful, very important to the prosecution's case. And her testimony was corroborated with the digital evidence.
The state's digital forensic expert testified about hundreds of text messages between Kouri and Carmen that matched Carmen's timeline of when Kouri contacted her for drugs. Because the messages had been deleted, investigators could only retrieve dates and times, but not the message's content.
Between the two of them, about 800 text messages.
The prosecution argued throughout the trial that this was not the first time Kouri used drugs to try to kill Eric. Investigators learned that 2 weeks before his death on Valentine's Day, Eric became ill after Kouri served him what they say was a drug-laced breakfast sandwich.
On Valentine's Day, it was a sandwich. When she murdered him, it was a drink.
As for a motive, prosecutors say Kouri needed money. A forensic accountant testified about her money problems.
What was the amount of Kouri Richins' liabilities?
Right around $8 million.
She said Kouri was in debt for nearly $8 million from her house flipping business, some of it from the recent purchase of that Midway mansion. And Eric, between the contracting business, property, and life insurance, was worth a lot.
On the day that Eric died, his estate was worth over $4 million.
There was also evidence that Kouri took out an additional $100,000 life insurance policy on Eric about a month before he died, and that Eric's signature was forged.
Question and known signatures were not authored by the same person.
A forgery, prosecutors say, committed by Kouri.
She used her business address for this policy and made herself the beneficiary. And frankly, even as a layperson looking at the signatures, Eric did not sign that document.
And there may have been another motive for murder. According to the state, Kouri wanted a new life with this man, Josh Grossman, a handyman she met through her house flipping business. They had an affair for about 2 years.
I don't know how much the family knew about the fact that she had a paramour. I don't even know how much Eric knew about it. That turned out to be a helpful piece of evidence that was discovered during the investigation.
Josh Grossman testified that after he heard Kouri had been arrested for Eric's murder, by which time they had broken up, he reached out to Eric's family.
I was overwhelmed with guilt, sorrow over my wrongdoings, infidelity.
Okay. With respect to Josh Grossman, he seemed like a believable witness. I think we all felt really sorry for him. At times that he was crying.
Josh told investigators about a conversation he had with Kouri that now, under the lens of murder, took on new meaning. Josh, who had served with the Army in Iraq, was asked about that conversation.
She asked if I had ever killed anybody.
Did she ask a follow-up question?
Yes. She asked me how it made me feel or something along those lines.
The jury was also shown text messages between Kouri and Josh.
I mean, you see those text messages back and forth, very lovey. Life is going to be different, I promise. If I was divorced right now and asked you to marry me, you would. I just want to lay on the couch and cuddle you, watch a murder documentary, and snuggle. I mean, I don't know that that gets any closer to the reality of what actually happened in this case.
Yeah, in hindsight, I don't think those were probably well thought out. These coming in the way they did and the timing of them, I think certainly did not help Kouri.
Can I get Exhibit 3-1, please?
Something else that did not help Kouri was this reservation she booked for a romantic getaway with Josh.
And did you know about a trip planned to the secret St. Martin's resort?
Yes.
Kouri sent Josh the reservation she made before Eric died, with the trip planned for April, a month after Eric's death.
The reservation for that trip was damaging to Kouri. To me, that made it look like she had been planning something for a while. And at some point soon, Eric would be out of the picture.
As the investigation proceeded, Kouri, said the prosecution, was worried about being caught. It showed web searches Kouri made after Eric's death, including luxury prisons for the rich in America How long does life insurance companies take to pay? If someone is poisoned, what does it go down on the death certificate as?
Kouri's internet searches, questions that were being searched, led me to believe she had a guilty mind.
These searches were done after she was handed a search warrant when they searched the home. It kind of takes the sting out of them. I think it's somewhat understandable.
This is after the fact.
This is after and well after, in fact.
She was looking for information based on what she found out after Eric died.
It was one of the points that Kouri's own defense team made as it tried to poke holes in the entire prosecution's case.
You know what you're never going to hear? Is how that fentanyl got inside of him. Because there is zero evidence of that.
Just outside of Salt Lake City, home to famed ski resorts including Park City, is the nearly 10-acre estate that Kouri Richins was planning on flipping.
It looks ginormous.
It's massive.
Sky Lazaro told us Kouri hoped to walk away with nearly $10 million in profit.
I think this was kind of her dream when she got into this idea of flipping houses, was to be able to do properties like this.
And it was that estate, said Kouri Richins' defense attorney Catherine Nestor. In her opening statement, the couple were toasting the night Eric died.
Eric and Kouri Richins were celebrating. They were celebrating because Kouri was about to close on the biggest real estate deal that her company had ever done. They had a lot to celebrate. They also had a wonderful family.
Nestor showed jurors a family photo of Eric and Kouri with their 3 sons, seemingly happy, and spoke about the love they shared for their boys.
And what's more important is that the boys adored their father, and Kouri knew that about her sons and about her family.
Nestor asked jurors to consider why Kouri would poison Eric, knowing the impact it would have on their 3 sons.
Now, after you've listened to all the evidence in this case, you're going to have to decide if Kouri Richins intentionally and knowingly poisoned the father of her kids, knowing that she was going to cause those little boys to feel pain every day for the rest of their life for the loss of their father.
Kouri's friend Greg Hall says Kouri would never do that.
She was loving, she was kind, she was giving, a wonderful mother.
Eric suffered from pain, a lot.
Nestor told jurors Eric Richins lived with chronic pain.
He suffered from knee and back pain related to his work. He did hard work.
And used drugs recreationally, often taking marijuana gummies.
These are all gummies that the police found in Eric's things.
Nestor said Eric also used pain medication.
You're also going to hear that there was an empty pill bottle right next to him.
The label on that pill bottle was for the painkiller hydrocodone, and it had expired in 2020. Nestor suggested it was Eric who may have come into contact with fentanyl.
You're going to hear that just a few weeks before Eric died, guess where he was? Mexico. Guess where the fentanyl comes into this country from? Mexico.
One by one,
We'll proceed with cross-examination of Ms. Richins-Benson.
the defense challenged the state's witnesses, beginning with Eric's sister, Katie, and her account of Kouri's behavior the night Eric died.
And you also said that she just stood there and did not comfort you in any way? Not that I recall. Okay, Your Honor, we'd like to play a clip. This is State's Exhibit 1-4. Okay, so that's Kouri. Freeze it right there. And that's her squatting down to comfort you while you're on the ground, and that's y'all hugging, right? Correct. So your memory about that was clearly wrong.
To be fair, it was 4 years ago.
Okay.
When it came to the state's key witness, Carmen Lauber,
Good afternoon, Ms. Lauber.
Good afternoon.
the defense pointed out that she made a deal with police in order to stay out of prison. Defense attorney Wendy Lewis played a portion of one of Carmen's interviews with investigators.
They're looking to pull your drug court deal and asked for 7 years on your 2 firsts. The only exception to that, and the only thing that they're willing to kind of help you out with, is if you can help us out with this.
And by so, he means like, give us the details that will ensure Kouri gets convicted of murder.
So that's what they said to you?
Yes.
You may be getting 7 years in prison on your state case.
Correct.
But if you help them out, that's not going to happen.
Correct.
The investigators keep pushing on her. We need more. That's not enough. And finally, in the last interview, they basically just spell it out.
I love Eric. It was done intentionally. He did not deserve it.
We believe you, and that's why we're here working on what your get-out-of-jail-free card looks like.
You know, this is your one get-out-of-jail-free card. You have to basically say it's fentanyl.
And you are willing to do whatever it takes to save yourself from getting kicked out of drug court and going to prison, correct?
I'm willing to go forward with the truth, yes.
I think the defense was really hammering her, and I don't think it went over that well.
She said, okay, go ahead and get the fentanyl.
That's your testimony today?
When I told her what I had, that's what she said, yes.
Even if Carmen bought fentanyl for Kouri, the defense said there was no proof that Kouri used the drug to poison her husband. Catherine Nestor told the jury the cups Kouri served the drinks in were never tested that night.
Nanny ended up putting them in the dishwasher the next morning.
I think the most powerful point the defense made is that we don't know exactly how the fentanyl got into Eric Richins' stomach.
When you have to prove murder, you have to prove that she's the one that administered the fentanyl to him.
The defense pushed back on the state's claim that Kouri had tried to poison Eric weeks earlier with that Valentine's Day sandwich. Kouri's friend Allie Staking said the couple downplayed that episode as Eric having an allergic reaction.
He took a bite of the sandwich and got an allergic reaction and had to shoot himself with an EpiPen.
Was everyone laughing?
Yes, we were all laughing, and we jokingly said, don't eat what Kouri feeds you.
Okay. And did Eric appear upset about what had happened prior with the sandwich?
No.
And as for the financial motive that Kouri was broke, Sky Lazaro says Kouri Richins' multi-million-dollar debt was typical in the house flipping business.
That's what they do for a living, is they invest in homes to flip.
So you're saying it's part of the business.
Right.
You get in debt, and then you flip the house, you sell it, and then you make your money back.
Absolutely.
And that $100,000 life insurance policy the state claimed wasn't signed by Eric? Nestor said there is an innocent explanation.
Now, I'm telling you right now, wives everywhere sign their husbands' names on a lot of things. You've got to find that she did it without his knowledge, and I don't know how they're going to prove that.
The defense also downplayed Kouri's affair with Josh Grossman, who testified they never went on that romantic getaway Kouri had booked for them.
Then Kouri ended the relationship, correct?
Right.
It was a little bit difficult to understand what the situation was with Josh Grossman, because she did seem to drop him pretty quickly.
Do you think that Josh Grossman's relationship with Kouri had anything to do with Eric's death?
No. If that were the case, after Eric passed away, that relationship would have continued, not been tapered off. It doesn't make any logical sense.
On March 12, 2026, after 3 weeks and 40 witnesses from the state,
Your Honor, the state rests its case.
the jurors say they were expecting to see defense evidence and hear from their witnesses.
Okay, now we can hear the rest of the story.
But what happened next
Who's defense counsel's first witness?
caught everyone off guard.
My mouth just dropped open. I was just like, what? I was so shocked, and I was actually really disappointed.
State's counsel and defense counsel are present. Ms. Richins is present.
13 days into the trial, Judge Richard Mrazek asked Kouri Richins' defense team about their first witness.
I was totally prepared for however many days or weeks of vigorous defense.
Who's defense counsel's first witness?
Can we have just a minute?
Yeah.
We have a couple of options.
Understood.
But the option defense attorneys Wendy Lewis and Catherine Nestor chose was one these jurors were not expecting.
Your Honor, actually at this time, the defense intends to rest.
I was like, seriously? Now we've seen just about everything in this trial.
I was disappointed because I'm like, I felt like there was more to the story and they denied us access to that.
I just want to make sure you've consulted with your client about this.
Absolutely.
Ms. Richins, may I ask you 2 direct questions?
Yes.
Do you understand that you have the right to testify at trial?
Yes, I do.
Are you following your attorney's advice and waiving your right to testify at trial?
Yes, I am.
I accept your waiver. I find it's knowing and voluntary.
Laura says she at least expected the defense to present testimony about Eric's alleged drug use and what role, if any, it played in his death.
They were just hinting ever so slightly at these things without backing it up. So I was really hoping for some testimony. If that's really true, or are you just trying to confuse everything?
Greg Skordas, who happens to be an attorney himself, says perhaps the defense saw no need to call witnesses because it felt there was enough reasonable doubt.
If you think you're winning after the prosecution puts on its case, then there's no reason to put on a case because you could only hurt yourself. So why even risk putting on a witness that could hurt you?
Laura says throughout the trial, she would sometimes look over at the defense table.
There was really no vibe coming from her. Like, I couldn't sense whether she was upset or angry or sad. She had a very flat effect.
Was that part of it, the likability of Kouri Richins at that point? Do you think they saw a woman who was having an affair, who was in debt?
I think that's how it certainly could be taken. There never was a real opportunity to humanize her, to make her likable, to make her seem like a person who wouldn't do that.
Mr. Bloodworth, would you like to proceed?
In its closing, the prosecution portrayed Kouri Richins as a ruthless social climber chasing a life beyond what she had at her family's expense.
Behind the facade, however, Kouri Richins was incompetent. Her business was imploding. All the while, Kouri Richins was more interested in spending time with Josh Grossman than Eric. But she did not have the money to leave Eric or the money to salvage her business. She is a risk taker. There was a way forward. Eric had to die.
The defense used its closing argument to lay out its entire case.
They want you to look at a woman in the worst moment of her life,
citing several reasons why there was reasonable doubt.
The investigation in this matter was nothing but sloppy. It was driven by bias.
Wendy Lewis told jurors the investigators developed tunnel vision early on, driven by Eric's family's belief that Kouri was guilty.
Everything about this investigation was led by the Richins family.
It did give me pause, whether there was this bias in the entire investigation that started with the Richins family.
What else do we find on that first day that Eric died?
Lewis pointed to that trip Eric took to Mexico shortly before his death and that empty pill bottle on his nightstand.
The hydrocodone bottle. What was kept in that bottle? What might be the best way to bring illegal pills back from Mexico? But then in a prescription bottle? So what's another explanation? What could have happened? Maybe he thought it was something else, and he accidentally got fentanyl. Maybe had they tested that bottle, we would know. But they didn't.
She urged the jurors to stand with Kouri Richins.
Kouri Richins did not kill Eric Richins. The state did not prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt, and you have the courage to tell them this and find Kouri Richins not guilty.
How was Kouri feeling? Did she ever feel like this may not go her way?
No. Absolutely not, honestly, not at all. She was upbeat, hopeful, enthused. She was absolutely convinced that she would be found not guilty.
I don't know, it didn't really make sense.
After sitting through the 3-week trial, jurors Eric and Laura had no way of knowing what other jurors were thinking, nor how long reaching a verdict could take.
I was thinking this is going to be a very long week.
But in the end, deliberations would only last about 3 hours. Laura, one of the 2 women on the 8-person jury, was selected as 4-person.
When we got back there, I think everyone was bursting. I felt like I was bursting at the seams.
For the jurors, Kouri's money trouble proved to be a motive for Eric's murder.
She was in such a position that she had to take drastic action to dig out of the financial hole that she was in. I shared that I thought the evidence was devastating against Kouri and that she was guilty. I think that opened the door to other people to share exactly where they stood.
And when the decision was made to vote, the rest of the jury agreed not just that Kouri murdered Eric, but that she previously attempted to kill him with that poison-laced Valentine's Day sandwich, and that she committed 2 counts of insurance fraud and forgery.
Ms. Richins, please stand.
On March 16, 2026, Judge Richard Mrazek read the verdict.
Count 1, aggravated murder. We, the jury, unanimously find that the defendant, Kouri Richins, is guilty of aggravated murder.
Kouri Richins was stunned as she learned she was found guilty of all 5 counts related to Eric's death, says her friend Greg Hall.
Totally unexpected. She was absolutely crushed and heartbroken.
Kouri Richins declined our request for an interview.
State of Utah versus Kouri Richins.
2 months later, on what would have been Eric Richins' 44th birthday, Kouri Richins, now wearing a prison uniform, was back in court to receive her sentence. Eric's family gave heartfelt statements. His sister Amy emphasized the impact his loss has had on his 3 sons.
This crime didn't just happen once. It happens every single morning when those boys wake up and realize their father is still gone.
The boys were 5, 7, and 9 when their world was shattered. Today they are 9, 11, and 13. And through written statements read by each of their counselors, for the first time, the world got to hear from them. The first statement read aloud was written by the youngest, Weston.
When someone talks about Kouri, it makes me feel hateful and ashamed. She took away my dad. It's made me have a hard time trusting people.
The middle child, Ashton, called Kouri greedy and said she did not properly care for him and his brothers.
When we got hurt, you didn't even care.
He accused her of harming the family pets.
You wouldn't let me put my kitten in the garage for safety at night, and we found it eaten by raccoons the next day. You wouldn't let us turn on and use the heater lamp for the chickens and bunnies, and they froze to death.
Carter, the oldest, said Kouri was often drunk and would lock him in his room.
This happened pretty much daily. I feel angry that she locked me in my room. I miss my dad, but I do not miss how my life used to be. I don't miss Kouri, I will tell you that.
All 3 boys asked the judge to give their mother, whom they only referred to as Kouri, the harshest possible sentence.
What she did is very sick.
When it was their turn, Kouri's friends and family pleaded for leniency. Her brother, Ronnie.
The injustice that's occurred here in this courtroom, it'll be righted in time. Until then, little sister, just know that I'm right by your side and always be right here for you. I love you.
Then Kouri Richins was allowed to speak. She did not testify at trial, but now she approached the podium. and used her time to address her kids.
I will use any opportunity I can to get a message to you.
She says she has been cut off from them for the past 2 years.
As much as you've been influenced into thinking that Dad was murdered, that I took your dad from you, that is completely wrong and an absolute lie. And just because someone may not be perfect, that's a far reach for them to be capable of murder.
Judge Mrazek had 2 options when considering Kouri Richins' sentence: either 25 years to life with the possibility of parole, or life in prison without parole. And he made it known he carefully considered each.
The court's duty is to make a decision, a weighty, long-lasting decision based on the best information available today. Accordingly, Ms. Richins, the court hereby sentences you to life without parole.
For Eric's family, it was the end to a years-long nightmare. Greg Skordas, the family spokesperson, says the true heartbreak is for the kids, who are now living with Eric's sister, Katie.
I can't think of anything worse as a child to lose your father, except to know that it was because of your mother. I mean, think about that.
My sweet baby boys. I know that today you don't want to speak to me, have a relationship with me, or you may think you hate me, and that's okay. I will never be angry at you for your feelings.
That was Kouri Richins addressing her children on May 13th at a sentencing hearing. It was the first time any of us heard from Richins since the Utah mother of 3 was found guilty of aggravated murder in her husband Eric Richins' 2022 fentanyl overdose death. She was also found guilty of 4 other charges, including attempted aggravated murder, 2 counts of insurance fraud, and forgery.
And now I will use any opportunity I can to get a message to you. Even if that means sharing it publicly to the world, fully restrained, in my jail clothes, in one of the most horrible situations possible.
She was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Welcome to the season finale of Postmortem. I'm your host, 48 Hours correspondent Anne-Marie Green, and joining me today is 48 Hours correspondent Natalie Morales to discuss the dramatic conclusion of a case that has certainly gripped the nation. Natalie, welcome.
Thank you, Anne-Marie, for having me again. And boy, is this explosive, this sentencing hearing. We not only heard statements from Kouri for the first time, but also from Eric's sisters, also from Eric and Kouri's children in a statement, which you'll hear as read by their counselors. Now, this is a case, as you know, it's been getting a lot of media attention. We've reported on it extensively as well. We're going to break it all down for you today.
All right, so we are going to get into this, but first, a reminder, as usual, everyone, if you haven't watched or listened to this episode, it is called Kouri Richins Behind the Facade. Go check it out now and then come on back for this conversation. And so, as you sort of point out, Natalie, a lot of people had been following this case, but it has gone on for quite a while. So why don't you give us a bit of a recap?
Well, let's go back to March of 2022. And, you know, Kouri Richins at the time was 31 years old, Eric, 39 years old. They seemed to have it all by outward appearances. They seemed to be in a good marriage. They had 3 young sons. But it was in the early morning hours of March 4th, 2022, that Kouri called 911. And she called and told the first responders that she had fallen asleep with one of the kids when she put him to bed. And then when she woke up, she went back to her bedroom and she
found Eric cold to the touch and not breathing. So when the first responders arrived, they tried to save Eric, but it was already too late. Now, initially, authorities thought that Eric may have died from an accidental drug overdose. But as investigators dug deeper, they suspected that Kouri poisoned Eric for financial gain.
So I think part of the reason why this case caught so many people's attention is because Richins notoriously published a children's book about grief. This is following her husband's death before being charged with murder, along with the insurance fraud charges and the forgery charges. But then in February of 2026, nearly 4 years after Eric's death, the trial finally begins in Utah in a courthouse there. What was the prosecution's case?
The prosecution alleged that Kouri poisoned Eric with fentanyl that was served to him either in a Moscow Mule cocktail or a lemon drop shot, after apparently previously attempting to poison him via a breakfast sandwich. This was on Valentine's Day, which was 2 weeks earlier. The prosecution painted Kouri as a killer who was set on taking her husband's money because she was deeply in debt with her house flipping business. And they pointed to the evidence that she was also the beneficiary of multiple life insurance policies on her husband and forged a policy as well. Now, the prosecution said that Eric Richins was considering divorcing his wife when he was killed, and that they had argued over this purchase of this multi-million-dollar mansion that she was trying to flip for her real estate business. The prosecution also said that Kouri was having an affair, and her former paramour, Robert Josh, I think he goes by Josh, more commonly Grossman, he actually testified to their relationship and the affair that they had during the trial. And the prosecution presented evidence that about 3 months before Eric's death, Kouri had even gone so far as to book a Caribbean vacation for herself and for Grossman, although it turns out they never ended up going on the trip because they broke up apparently after Eric died.
Huh. Okay, so then a lot of motive there. What about the defense? What did the defense argue?
So the defense said Eric was dependent on drugs to deal with his chronic pain, and he had back issues apparently. And they maintained that he most likely died from an accidental overdose. Now, Kouri's attorney said that Eric might have actually gotten the fentanyl himself when he had traveled to Mexico just a few weeks before he died. The defense also implied that he might have taken a marijuana gummy that he didn't know was laced with fentanyl. And it was really interesting and I think kind of shocking to the jurors, and you're going to hear from them in just a little bit. The defense made the decision not to call any witnesses, and Kouri did not testify during the trial.
Why did the defense think that this was the best approach?
Many defense attorneys would advise their clients against testifying on their own behalf because it just opens themselves up to then being cross-examined and harshly generally cross-examined by the prosecution. And, in fact, I asked Sky Lazaro, who was Kouri's original defense attorney, about that. She made the point that if the defense also had called witnesses, the state then would have the opportunity to rebut the witnesses. And it's not the defense that has the burden of proof here. It is the prosecution. And Sky pointed out that the defense likely thought they were in a strong position. In fact, Greg Hall, who is Kouri's really good friend and has been her supporter through all of this, he was there during a lot of the trial. Greg said that when the case wrapped, that the defense felt, and Kouri in particular, felt really strong about their position. They felt like they were winning.
Well, I mean, their senses were off because the jury deliberated for about 3 hours before returning the verdict, right? They found her guilty on all 5 counts, including aggravated murder, attempted murder, and 2 counts of insurance fraud and forgery. One of the things that is new in this episode is 48 Hours actually interviewed 2 of the jurors from the trial, Laura and Eric, and they requested that we only use their first names. But they gave us some insight into, what the jury was considering, how they deliberated. What did they have to say?
They both said, Eric and Laura, that the minute the trial ended and they walked back into the deliberation room, They felt completely convinced of Kouri's guilt, but they didn't know how the others felt yet. And Laura was the foreperson on the case, but she said she could just see that everybody was bursting at the seams to talk. They share what they thought about the witnesses, the strengths, the weaknesses. But when they did take that vote, Laura said it was quick. I mean, deliberating for just 3 hours, it was pretty short, especially when you consider this is a murder charge and all these other charges as well.
What evidence was the most convincing for them?
So the juror Eric felt there were some inconsistencies with Kouri's story and with what was actually presented as evidence. They pointed to her behavior right in the aftermath after discovering her husband was cold to the touch. They first talk about that 911 call, as well as the video that came from the responding officer's body cam. And they said it didn't seem like Kouri was trying very hard to resuscitate him. Now, you can contrast that with these text messages that Kouri exchanged with a friend, where Kouri said that she was screaming, she was beating on Eric's chest, trying to get him to come back to life. They were also looking on the body cam footage of the responding officers to see how Kouri was acting in those moments. And Kouri is hiding her face a couple of times behind her hands. Like, you don't see tears. Laura, the juror, said it's difficult to judge how someone grieves or how somebody acts in a traumatic situation. But again, what was most impactful to Laura was the time that it took for Kouri apparently to start the CPR. So the prosecution in its closing arguments actually had a stopwatch to show that it was approximately 6 minutes between when the 911 operator told Kouri to start and when it appears that Kouri on the other side of that call actually says she started.
Wow.
And the most convincing piece of that evidence came from the digital download expert who was able to analyze the phone data and determined that Kouri did not put her phone on speakerphone, that she was still holding it up to her ear when she said she was doing CPR, which again should be done with both hands, suggesting she wasn't actually doing it, or she was doing it one-handed, so not really giving it the full effort. Then beyond that, you know, Kouri's money trouble really was the biggest motivating factor that they saw. That was the main motive that convinced them that Kouri was responsible for Eric's murder.
So then 2 months after her conviction on what would have been Eric's 44th birthday, Kouri Richins is back in court for sentencing. She's now convicted. She's in shackles. She's wearing a prison uniform. This sentencing hearing lasts nearly 5 hours. The judge allowed a lot of statements into the record, including Kouri's 3 children, who are still quite young, 9, 11, and 13. They have prepared written statements that are read by counselors.
Right. And again, this is the first time that we're hearing from these 3 boys, the first time that they're expressing their feelings publicly. I want to play a few portions from that court hearing. Now, the first statement was written by the youngest of the boys, Weston. His counselor read his statement.
I feel a lot better about myself now than I did with Kouri. I can't ever see my dad again. I want her to go to prison forever. If she got out, I would be so scared, really mad, and I wouldn't want to go with her anywhere.
I mean, it is heartbreaking. All of the 3 boys expressed feeling safer with Kouri being locked up. The oldest explicitly asked the judge to give her that life sentence. So it gives you a sense of, you know, what has been lost in this relationship with her children.
So Ashton is Kouri Richins' middle child, who accused Kouri of not caring for him or his brothers, but he also accuses Kouri of harming the pets. He referred to his brothers in the statement just by their initials. Let's listen to some portions of his statement read out loud by his counselor.
You took away my dad for no reason other than greed, and you only cared about yourself and your stupid boyfriends. You were not caring and watching over me and my brothers. I had to be a parent to W. C and I would walk him to the bus stop, feed him, and watch him. You wouldn't let our dog outside, and then the dog would pee inside. You created this problem, then you would smack my dog on the head as hard as you could. You wouldn't let me put my kitten in the garage for safety at night, and we found it eaten by raccoons the next day. You wouldn't let us turn on and use the heater lamp for the chickens and bunnies, and they froze to death.
This is kind of all new information, right? Was this sort of stuff brought up at the trial?
Nothing of this was brought up at the trial. What came into question was how she was as a wife, not as how she was as a mother.
These two children would have been quite young at the time when they were living with her.
Right.
Carter is the eldest son, and Carter says that Kouri was often drunk, that she would lock him in his room. Here's another counselor reading his statement.
I felt like I had to take care of my siblings. Ash mostly took care of me, though, because I was locked in my room. Ash would bring me food. Kouri would lock me up if I told her she was drunk. This happened pretty much daily. I feel angry that she locked me in my room.
We should point out that about these statements, they're not calling her mom. They're calling her Kouri. But we don't know if prompts were given to the children to get those kinds of statements or what kinds of questions they were even asked by their counselors.
The court also heard from Katie, that is Eric's sister. I want to play some of that sound.
There is no question that this case is famous and that Kouri is now famous. But what Kouri never mentions in talking about her fame and notoriety are the reasons why this case is now famous. It is famous for how appalling and sickening it is. It is famous because a mother meticulously planned to kill her husband, killed him while their children were sleeping in the next room, and then had the audacity to hold herself out as the author of a children's book about grief and loss. It is famous because she spent time Googling luxury prisons for the rich in America. It is famous because from her jail cell, she scripted a bunch of phony testimony so that her brother could perpetrate a fraud on the court.
No love lost there.
Absolutely not. I mean, she's not just angry about the loss of her brother, but she clearly is disgusted by Kouri Richins and her character, the type of character she thinks she is. Eric has another sister. Her name is Amy. She also spoke.
I didn't just lose my brother. I lost my sister-in-law. I lost someone I considered my friend. We had good times together. That loss is so complicated now, Your Honor, because it forces you to grieve someone who is still alive while facing the horror of what they have done. It is grief that doesn't resolve. It just sits there heavy every day. This crime has fractured our family in ways outsiders cannot understand. Kouri did not just kill Eric. She attempted to kill the spirit of everyone who loved him. She lied to his children, she lied to the world, and has shown no remorse while dancing on his grave for profit.
Amy, I think, is a little more retrospective and looking back on the relationship that she had with Kouri and talking about that loss. Interesting to hear her say, I didn't just lose my brother, I lost my sister-in-law. I lost someone I considered my friend.
There were other people who spoke, though, on behalf of Kouri, like her friend Greg, who described her as a loving mother who always went out of her way to help other people who were in need. And then her brother Ronnie said this, and as Ronnie was speaking, Kouri was crying.
We don't, with 100% certainty, know what happened to Eric. No one does, but we do know with 100% certainty that it wasn't caused by you. We know that. The police know it, the prosecution knows it, and everyone watching this trial knows it. They could not prove their theory, just the opposite, and yet here we are. For some reason, unbeknownst to us, really bad things happen to really good people, Kouri, and you were just really too good of a person, I guess.
Very stark contrast to the other statements that we heard.
Yeah. I mean, one side paints her as just so heartless and so evil and so greedy. And here you have, the other side is like, no, she was an incredible mother and an incredible friend and an incredible sibling.
Right, the too good of a person. We
Mhm.
did speak with Ronnie when we first reported on this case on 48 Hours, and he clearly believes in her innocence. And the same goes for Greg Hall, who I interviewed once again for this most recent hour. And they all feel that the jury missed the opportunity to get to know her.
And, I mentioned that Kouri had been crying when she was listening to her one brother there, but she had a lot of facial expressions during the sentencing hearing. She looked surprised. She looked incredulous. She wasn't stone faced. Let's put it that way.
No, certainly not. I mean, the one thing that you could say about Kouri, she was very expressive. She at one point appeared to be smirking. She rolled her eyes, it seemed, when Katie was speaking, Eric's sister. People look at that and they will make judgments based on that. Of course, she's already been judged by the jury. They've already found her guilty, but now it's her sentencing hearing.
And then, of course, we heard from Kouri Richins herself, and she spoke for about 30 minutes in a statement that was sort of a letter for her sons. She expressed, regret for some of her behavior, but notably, she maintained her innocence, even apologizing to her sons for how the case unfolded. I'm going to play a clip of that.
I'm sorry that 8 people from a jury who have never met you or me or our family had the right to determine our future. And they did that in less than 3 hours. In a perfect world, there might be justice. But in a perfect world, nothing ever goes wrong. Tragedies don't happen. Some think a verdict or this sentencing will be the answer that they seek or that they need, but it won't. It will only give them something else to think about for a while. It may help to disperse some of their hurt or their resentment, but it won't relieve it. This grief will outlive us all.
What's so interesting of what she said there, in my opinion, is she says, I'm so sorry for the jury's decision. I'm so sorry the jury found me guilty. She said that her sons have the right to be angry, of course, sad and confused, and that, quote, one day when this is all over, we can sit down and talk about all of this and sort it all out. And she ended by saying she will continue to call her boys every day, even if her calls are blocked, and that she loves them forever because, Kouri has not had any real contact with the boys in all of these years since she was, awaiting trial.
So the judge is taking all of this in. And the judge sort of openly debates whether or not to sentence Kouri Richins to 25 years to life or life without parole. He weighs the impact of the sentence on her 3 sons and really expresses a desire that everyone impacted by Eric's death find their way to a state of peace. Ultimately, the judge sentences Kouri Richins to life without the possibility of parole. Natalie, is this the last we will hear from Kouri Richins?
Probably not. According to her team, Kouri plans to appeal the verdict, so this is going to keep going. But for the boys, I think, and for Eric's family, they feel that it's over and they want it to be done with.
And I mean, do we have any idea how her sons are doing today?
Well, we know that they're living with Katie, that's Eric's sister, and her husband, Clint. They've really tried to keep them away from all of this attention. Now they've lost both parents and extended family as well. So the ripple effects of something like this will continue. And unfortunately, it's the children who really pay the greatest price.
Absolutely. Well, Natalie, thank you so much for joining me today for Postmortem.
Good to talk about this with you again, Anne-Marie.
If you like this episode, please rate and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.